Hey folks, welcome to the Wealth Transfer with TC. Today, I'm going to give you guys an update on Zion Oil and Gas. Now, many of you might already know about the update, which is the testing results of the MJ02 well. And those results ended up being that the MJ02 well is not a viable well. In this video, I am going to share some and discuss some additional information, some of it disturbing, that I believe is going to be important concerning the future of Zion Oil, or whether or not if people should stay invested or not. Now, before I go any further, I'm not a financial advisor. I'm just sharing information, giving you my thoughts and my opinions on that information. Now, folks, I take Zion Oil very seriously. When I first got involved with Zion Oil for almost 6 years now, I've made multiple videos on Zion Oil. I do believe in their mission. Doesn't mean that I believe in every decision that they have made. I've been through the thick and thin, like some of you. Some of you have been in it a lot longer, but I've been through 2 wells within 6 years, which that statement alone is disturbing within itself. And I used to be at a point when I first got involved with Zion Oil, I believed a lot of the conspiracy theories surrounding Zion Oil and a lot of the BS that still goes around on some of these social media sites that pump Zion Oil. Now, several years ago, I took the task of learning how to trade, learning how to read charts, learning how to read the short information, learning how to read SEC reports, learning about the oil industry, and learning how oil drilling works. And I have the videos to back up everything that I've ever said about Zion Oil. After I learned all these things, my eyes were opened and my entire perspective of Zion Oil changed. And one of the most important things that I've always shared, especially with the stock, was to make sure you put in your stop losses to protect your investment. Now, I know there's a lot of other leaders of different social media groups that don't like me talking about this. They don't like the way that I talk about Zion Oil because I look at it realistically and I don't promote a lot of the conspiracy theories that they do concerning Zion Oil. Now, if you guys remember, back in December of last year, I was sharing vigorously about putting in your stop losses. And Zion Oil actually tanked twice within the last year before this news release. I told you guys last December that I wasn't going to buy anymore, in that I was trying to be super careful, and all of you should be very careful. After the shareholder meeting, I told you guys to be even more cautious because I realized at that point that they did not have a viable well. But I did share that it was still very possible that they could, and to make sure that you're prepared so you don't lose your investment. Some of you had the opportunity to take profit, and you didn't. Some of you had the opportunity to put in stop losses, but you didn't. I also talked about some of the prophetic words dealing with Zion Oil. If you remember, originally, Johnny Currency 365 talked about this, and I can't remember the prophet's name, whether it's Prophet Sharon or Karen or somebody else, but they said that God was not happy with what was going on internally with Zion Oil and Gas. And also that they were drilling in the wrong spot. That was a video that Johnny Currency 365 talked about, and I talked about those same prophecies too as well. Then Prophet Solomon said in her last video about Zion Oil, and I shared this with you guys, that it was not going to be a viable well, right? And there was going to be some time before they actually do a viable well. So prophetically speaking, I've shared these things too as well. When it came to the shareholder meeting, there were so many red flags. And, I'm sorry for those people who belong to certain social media groups that they did not protect their investment and they were being told otherwise. And that is another video that I'm going to get into, and I'm going to expose some things concerning what's going on in some of these social media groups. All right, so if you are still invested in Zion Oil, you guys need to pay attention. All right, so currently you can see the price. It closed out at 0.076. It opened up at 7 cents. The high, actually, it reached 8 cents. The very lowest it went this morning was at 4.5 cents. Now, I shared with you guys all weekend, right? I didn't make a video about it, but I did post something on YouTube. Also, I talked about it on the Patreon and the Telegram and so forth. And I shared with you guys, go ahead and put in your sell market orders because you don't know how low this was going to go. But come to find out, a lot of the same pumpers, they're doing everything to encourage people to keep buying and buying and buying. And they're not giving you the facts. I'm only going to tell you the truth about what's going on. All right, so despite you seeing this, I told you guys that it's going to be about 2 years, maybe even 3 years before they can drill another well. All right, and I'm getting ready to prove that to you from the CEO's own mouth. Now, despite the price you've seen, oh, well, it bounced back up. Everybody's all excited. Everybody's happy because they don't feel like they've lost a lot. But a lot of people were investing at 30 and 35 cents and didn't have their stop losses in. It dropped down to 12 cents, and now we're at 7.5 cents. Let's go ahead and go over the update. Right? Most of you should have already probably read it if you're invested. If you have not read this update or don't know what's going on, folks, there's nothing that I can do to help you guys out anymore. And if you're invested in any company, any crypto, any investment at all, you should be following them, whether it's on social media, so you can get all the updates. All right. And I also shared with you guys, make sure to follow Coach Financial channel because he gives updates too. With everything that's going on in the crypto world, I cannot keep up with everything. And he's provided some really good information over the last month that just reiterates and confirms with me what is going on with Zion Oil. Now, here's the update. I'm going to go over it. I'm going to stop as I'm reading so I can explain some of these things to you. I'm sure most of you have already read the update. Dear Zion supporters and shareholders, upon conclusion of the latest testing and completion procedures of our MJ02 well, and after a thorough analysis of the results by Zion and third-party experts on December the 7th, Zion determined that the well will not currently produce hydrocarbons in commercial quantities. All right, so that was their announcement saying that it's not a viable well. Although logs strongly indicate the presence of hydrocarbons, we have determined that the zone does not have sufficient permeability to be productive. We will set a temporary plug in the wellbore to preserve its integrity and the opportunity to make future use of it should circumstances and technological innovations warrant that. Okay, and just talking about the presence of hydrocarbons, when I learned more and more about the oil industry, folks, it's actually there's oil everywhere. So they plugged it up thinking they might go back into it again. I don't see why they would, considering that it's a failed well. But anyways, based on what we learn about the characteristics of this deep Mohila zone in the MJ2 well, we are aggressively reanalyzing our logs and other data from the NJ1 well, which was drilled on the same pad site. Knowing this zone is structurally higher than the equivalent zone in MJ2, we are diligently evaluating whether or not if this zone was adequately tested in the MJ1 well. Okay, folks, so what they're saying now is they're reanalyzing, looking back all their information over MJ1, and they're going to make a determination whether or not if they did it right the first time as far as testing the MJ1 well. Because they said they're evaluating whether the zone was adequately tested. Even though they spent millions of dollars and months and months and months testing this well, now they don't know whether or not if it was adequately tested. Which that is disturbing to me because you're telling your investors that, well, we don't really know if we really tested it correctly. Right? After spending millions of dollars and putting people through all this emotional turmoil concerning this investment. Once we have completed that analysis, we may re-enter the MJ1 wellbore, which is cased to the bottom, and attempt a recompletion in the Mohila zones. So now they are saying that they may go back into MJ01. Now the question is, why are they not looking at going and drilling somewhere else? Okay, so if they re-enter MJ01, they're thinking that there might be a possibility that MJ01 all of a sudden again is a viable well, right? But they have to do their analysis first, right? And then they have to go through and, go back into MJ01, which is going to cost millions of dollars. This is probably going to be like another 6-month tour, right, with MJ01. And to be honest with you folks, it's just going to end up being the same because if it wasn't viable then, it's not going to be viable now. Right? We will continue to explore the Megiddo Jezreel license as we are confident that we are in an active petroleum system. Again, when I learn more about the oil industry and about how oil is underground and all that and so forth, there's a lot of areas that have active petroleum systems. We give thanks and praise to God for his ongoing provisions. We also appreciate our loyal shareholders and supporters who make this work possible. Your prayers are making a difference, and as always, we'll continue to focus on the vision of the company. We will provide material updates when we have relevant information to share with the public. Sincerely, Rob Dunn, CEO. Now, the first thing is that when you go back to MJ01, when it wasn't a viable well, they actually gave you a lot of the testing results. They told you what the flow rate was, or the type of oil, and some other important information that I would think that you would want to let the people who have been waiting for 2 years know what was going on with this well. All right, now the question is, first of all, why would they go back into MJ01 if it was not a viable well? Well, the first thing is, folks, is that they don't really have any choice. They haven't discussed whether or not on having another pad or drilling another well. And there is reason for this, okay? And I've discussed this before. Nobody was listening. Nobody was paying attention. And I told you guys that the shareholder meeting, there wasn't something right. There was so many red flags. You know what? And I tried to share them, and you know what? There was a lot of people that were trying to dismiss everything that I was trying to say. Now, I'm getting ready to share some information from the shareholder meeting that's going to prove to you that this is going to be another 2 years before they can drill into another well. That's why they have to go back into MJ01, and hopefully they're thinking that maybe there's this possibility that this well could be a viable well all of a sudden. All right, so here is the annual shareholder meeting that was back on June the 8th. And if you guys remember, I told you guys that there was all these red flags. Nobody was excited. And after I watched the whole thing multiple times, I determined that it was like these guys knew that this well was not going to be a viable well. So I want you guys to listen to this, and it's 1 minute long, and there are 2 questions that are asked, and we get 2 answers that are important as far as the future of Zion Oil and drilling another well.
How many drill sites can we drill from the current pad?
Well, currently we've had 2 wells drilled from the current pad. We've got the MJ1 well and the MJ2 well. So real estate wise, we're probably at capacity on that site.
Can we speak to anything about having a second pad?
It's a process that requires a lot of paperwork. I think we all saw that at the beginning of MJ1 with the HAFCA surveys, the environmental impact assessments, etc. So, you know, that's a 4 question. It's probably 2 to 3 year out there. I can't come up with a finite timeline, but I do recall going through some of the permitting process. It is a very lengthy process for them.
All right, so you heard what they said. I'm going to play it one more time and stop it after each question. Answer.
How many drill sites can we drill from the current pad?
Well, currently we've had 2 wells drilled from the current pad. We've got the MJ1 well and the MJ2 well. So real estate wise, we're probably at capacity on that site.
So did you hear what he said? How many drill sites can we drill from the current pad? And he said that real estate wise, they are at capacity. So they can't drill anymore on that pad site. They can only go back into MJ01. So I want you guys to fully understand that. Let's get to the next question.
Can we speak to anything about having a second pad?
It's a process that requires a lot of paperwork. I think we all saw that at the beginning of MJ1 with the HAFCA surveys, the environmental impact assessments, etc. So, you know, that's a 4 question. It's probably 2 to 3 year out there. I can't come up with a finite timeline, but I do recall going through some of the permitting process. It is a very lengthy process for them.
All right, folks, so you heard it from the CEO's mouth. And the question was asked about having a second pad. And he says that requires a lot of paperwork. That was part of his answer. You have to have permits, surveys, environmental assessments, all that. He said takes 2 to 3 years. So basically what this was telling me is that they can't do anymore but go into MJ01. Even regardless of Netanyahu's in office, some of this stuff is going to have to be done. Maybe they can get some things sped up. But 2 to 3 years. And And we've been waiting for almost 2 years on MJ02. So why weren't they setting it up for the next drill site? It was like they didn't have any future plans. There was no backup, nowhere, and they didn't have nowhere else to drill. Why wouldn't they have started the second pad process and getting all these things done? So what if you have to do paperwork? That doesn't even sound right, folks. It almost sounds like they had actually put all their eggs in this one basket, and now that the basket didn't work out, now they're thinking they have to go back to an old well that was not viable. Now, so do you hear what I'm saying, folks, on what they are saying? They didn't have any future plans. They had nothing mapped out or planned out. It was just MJ02 or bust. You know, the disturbing thing is that they weren't working on anything else. They didn't even start the process of doing the paperwork. And that's why I think when Prophet Solomon said that it was going to be some time because of the permits and the assessments and surveys and all that has to be done. Okay, so what if they go back into MJ01? First of all, they're going to need more money to do this. So which means they're going to have to sell more stocks. And I want you guys to look at this information because this is shocking, right? But it's also expected because they don't have any revenue coming in. The only revenue they have to keep this project going, to keep the paychecks going, is your money. So somebody had shared this, and this is starting at the beginning of this year, January 2022, they had a total of outstanding shares of 386.5 million. All right, so now the outstanding shares is 515.5 million shares. That's 130 million shares that they have had to sell to keep things going. Right, so what do you think is going to have to happen for all the rest of 2023, right? If they got to get the permits going, they got to get the surveys done and all that stuff, they're going to continue to have to sell stocks. And then when they start drilling again, right, let's just give an estimate. Let's just say they can get everything done within a year and a half, right? Then they're going to have to sell even more shares to start the drilling process. So you guys need to understand this important information, and you know what you're doing with your money, because you're essentially are providing paychecks to them, and they're not going to be able to drill for 2 years. Now, they could go back in MJ01, but they're going to be doing it with money that they are selling from selling stocks, right? And what if it's not viable? But something is very off. In that shareholder meeting, there were so many red flags. I said, you know what? Next time my stop losses kick in, I'm done. And that's exactly what happened. So you guys know this information going in. So if you're still in this and it still continues to go down and you want to wait the 2 to 3 years, that is up to you. But there's not going to be any sympathy at all whatsoever concerning this because you have the information. I have provided the information to you guys. So let's just say this. What if they go back into MJ01 and they spend all this money, they sell more shares, right? And then it's still not a viable well. They're still stuck in the same position as they are in right now. There was a lot of decisions made over the last several years concerning, and they weren't always the best decisions. And I understand. I have a project that I've been working on for over 10 years. And it got to a point to where I had to make a decision. And you know what I did? I got rid of mostly everybody. And now I have to start all over again. And maybe that's what needs to be done here. I mean, I take a look at the updates and I go back over the years and it's just like, they play on the words and stuff, instead of just being upfront, and to me, I'm getting tired of it. You look at this last update, they didn't even give us all the information as they gave us before. So one of the things is that I do want to point out, when it comes to this, if you have sold, do not buy back in for at least 31 days. And if you are going to sell, keep in mind tax loss harvesting. And what this is that you can deduct your losses. So let's say you bought in at 20 cents, 30 cents, 40 cents, right? Maybe you even bought in years ago at over $1 and you sell, you can deduct some of your losses, right, on this particular stock, right? So that is something that you need to think about. All you have to do is just look up tax loss harvesting. And at least you can deduct some of your losses on your taxes when you file them next year. So folks, during this time period, they're going to reconsider whether or not if they're going to go back into MJ01. If they don't, they're going to have to find somewhere else to drill, and it's going to be at least 2 years. if they do go back in the MJ01 and it's a failure, they're still back in that same position where they have to wait 2 years to start drilling somewhere else, which means there's plenty of room for the stock to continue to go down below a penny. Now, I know there's a lot of people out there in these social media groups. They're doing everything they can to keep the stock up to save face. But folks, this is reality. And I'm sorry, I tried to tell you guys back last December. I did everything that I could to share with you guys to make sure to protect your investment. And it's a bummer that other people in these social media groups did not share that with you. They didn't share some of this information with you. They kept it hidden from you for their own gain. And I'm going to do a video about that, but there's a lot of shady stuff going on in some of these social media groups. Just amazing that we've been through this whole process for 2 years and nothing. And this is not about faith. This has to do with reality and facts, right? And if God was going to allow this to work, he would have made MJ02 work. I just don't think right now that it's Zion Oil's time. And prophetically speaking, it's going to be some time. And you know, what really disturbs me is that there was a video going around with Amanda Grace as if she was talking about Zion Oil in a big major find, right? You get, some of you guys know what I'm talking about. And these are the types of videos that were being used to push you guys to continue to invest and then not protect your investment as well, because there was an assumption that this well was going to be viable. And let this be a lesson for the next well. Hopefully, some of these people in these who lead these social media groups change their tune and stop pumping based off of conspiracy theories and other BS. So if I were you, I would get out, wait 31 days, and get back in if you really want to get back in, right? But of course, I always say pray about your investments. Now I know some people are looking at this price, and some people are celebrating at the fact that it only dropped for a certain amount of time. That's because everybody was encouraged to buy. Everybody, you know, I was watching some of the people post these messages on these different social media boards, pumping the stock as if they have some type of prospect in the near future, and they don't, folks. And that is the reality of it. So anyways, I thank you guys for listening. God bless. TC out.